Today, we're going to explore something that goes much deeper than just talking to an AI. We're going to look at the very architecture of thought and how we can learn to consciously design it through the way we ask questions.
And this, right here, is the core idea for our whole exploration. This technology, it isn't some external brain we plug into. It's a mirror. The depth and clarity of what comes back is just a direct reflection of the depth and clarity we put in. The machine simply reveals the quality of the mind that's operating it.
So we really have to reframe how we think about this. A prompt isn't just a command or a simple question. Think of it more like the deliberate design of a cognitive process. Every word, every limitation, every instruction, it's all part of a blueprint for how a system should reason.
Our path today is built around these fundamental pillars. We'll start by exploring how to shift our mental perspectives. Then we'll move into engineering the actual process of reasoning. We'll discover the surprising power of constraints. And finally, we'll synthesize what all of this really tells us about our own minds.
So our first focus is on breaking the habits of linear thought. The most common trap in any kind of reasoning is to approach a problem from that one single default angle. The patterns we're about to look at are designed to systematically take that tendency apart.
The crucial shift, then, is moving from a one-dimensional question to a multidimensional one. A linear inquiry just asks, what's the best solution? But a multi-perspective inquiry understands that the word best is pretty subjective. So instead, it generates real insight by forcing a kind of dialogue between different, often conflicting, points of view. And here are three really elegant ways to engineer that shift. We can create a tension, a dialectic, between pure logic and pure intuition. We can break out of the present moment by reasoning from the future looking back or from the past looking forward. Or we can force innovation by fusing ideas from completely separate fields of knowledge.
What's so powerful about this is how it makes the abstract concept a concrete instruction. This isn't just a suggestion, right? It's a command to simulate an entire cognitive process. It forces the model to create tension between two ways of thinking and then resolve that tension into a higher-level synthesis. That is active thought design.
And that brings us to our next theme. If the first part was about changing the camera angle, this part is about actually building the engine of thought. We're moving from perspective to process. These frameworks are all designed to build discipline and robustness into the thinking. Instead of just asking for an answer, we're asking the AI to think like an engineer, to stress test the idea, to work backward from the goal, to check its own work, and to present a plan before it even begins. Now, this self-auditing pattern is incredibly powerful. It completely changes the dynamic. It's no longer just a simple request and response, it becomes this recursive, collaborative loop. The AI stops being just a generator and becomes a partner in the refinement, explicitly tasked with finding the flaws in its own first draft. And this breaks it down perfectly. It's a simple, elegant, three-step loop. Draft, critique, revise. By building this process directly into the prompt, we're guaranteeing that the final output has already been through at least one round of internal quality control. The result is just a far more sound and well-reasoned conclusion.
Our third framework gets into a deeply counterintuitive idea, but one that's absolutely essential for creativity: the power of limitation. This is where we learn that imposing boundaries doesn't actually restrict the output, it focuses it. It gives it shape.
And these patterns all use constraints in slightly different ways. We can use them to build memory and context, piece by piece. We can use them to funnel a huge range of possibilities into one, sharp, creative output. Or we can use the simple constraint of asking why over and over to dig down to the absolute root of an idea. This idea, constraint alchemy, is really central to mastering this. A totally blank canvas can be paralyzing. But by providing a strict frame, say a 50-word limit, or a required metaphor, or a specific poetic structure, we force the model to make more interesting and deliberate connections. The limitation itself becomes a catalyst for ingenuity.
And here's a perfect example of that in practice. These two constraints, extreme brevity and the need for a single metaphor, make a simple recitation of facts totally impossible. The model has no choice but to synthesize the core idea into its most potent, elegant form. And that right there is the alchemy, turning the raw lead of information into the gold of genuine understanding.
So, we've looked at shifting perspectives, engineering processes, and using constraints. We now arrive at the synthesis. What do all of these frameworks, when you put them all together, what do they truly represent? This, I think, is the ultimate point.
The goal isn't to be tricky or to find some complex combination of words. The goal is simply to be deliberate, to be conscious of the cognitive architecture you are building with every single instruction. Mastery here isn't about cleverness, it's about intentionality.
And this brings us full circle. The act of designing these advanced prompts, well, it forces a profound kind of self-reflection. Because in order to instruct a machine on how to reason from multiple perspectives or how to critique its own logic, you first have to be able to model that process in your own mind. It becomes a discipline for clarifying your own thoughts.
And so we're left with this final, maybe provocative question. As we engage with these systems, we are constantly, whether we know it or not, externalizing our own cognitive patterns. The quality of the conversation becomes a diagnostic tool. It offers this clear, unfiltered reflection of our own mental habits, our blind spots, and our potential for deeper, more structured thought. The only question is, what will we choose to see in that reflection?